Extreme Collectibles here with another addition to my Star Wars line. So quite a few of the videos I've been posting are... The hell just dropped? Oh, my microphone. It's a microphone. We don't have outtakes in this show, but another addition to my villain Star Wars line. So I've been collecting Siths and reviewing them as they come in, mostly older pieces, a few new ones on PO. And I wanted to add this guy. I'm also looking for the Gamorrean Guard and one other villain. Oh yeah, a custom one. So let's dive right into Boba Fett. Extreme Collectibles here with XM Studios quarter scale Boba Fett statue. Purchased this guy, as I said, to add to my Star Wars villains line. It originally started with just the Dark Lords, the Siths. I can never say that right, and I probably never will be able to. Got him from Spec Fiction. SpecFiction.com is a great place for XM pieces for the US distributor. And that's the third video I've given him a shout out. So I want to clarify something. Somebody said something the other day to me, Mr. X, I assume you get kickbacks or whatever it is. I know that does happen, not with me. I don't want kickbacks. When I recognize somebody, I think recognition is earned. It's not bought. I don't judge people that do that because I'm not here to judge other people. But even if somebody like Sideshow or a custom company offered me something to review, I just wouldn't do it. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but for me it's not my taste. So I have to spend all my own, I would say hard-earned money, but I don't work that hard. So back to this guy. There are 800 of these made. I paid around $900, which including shipping, which is close to what the retail was. He arrived in a very large, big XM Studios box, which, my God, I've never had a damaged XM piece, so I can't criticize their packaging, but getting that lid off is one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life because I live a very sheltered life, obviously. But two different layers to the foam packaging, and there was a lot of pieces to this. I actually did have to look at the manual once, which, you know, kind of pisses me off. But the base, including the smokestacks here, are one piece. This panel on the back is another piece. This ballistic metal piece is another. There's another little piece that just kind of sets in here. Boba Fett minus his jetpack, arms, head, cape, and right shoulder pad is one piece. Then you have to put in his arms, his right shoulder pad, his cape, his head, his antenna. His jetpack actually sits right on these blasters, and these two thrusters, they come in separate pieces. So quite a few pieces, quite a bit of dynamic engineering and design, which is one of the reasons this statue is freaking awesome. Very, very heavy, and I hope he does okay on the shelf I'm going to put him on. But that's a little bit of background. As you guys know, the character itself, both in the comics and the movies, is one of those offshoot characters that wasn't meant to be popular but ended up being. Kind of reminds me of Steve Urkel from Family Matters. If you recall that show, it was a show from the 90s, I believe, maybe late 80s, early 90s. And they had a nerdy neighbor named Steve Urkel who was set to appear in 3 episodes. And by season 3, and they had 8 or 9 seasons of those, it's weird that I'm a Family Matters expert, isn't it? By season 3, every single episode revolved around him. And I think Boba Fett's kind of the same way, but they never took the reins to make him such an important player in the comics and the movies. People are screaming for a movie. You know, he had Jango Fett had a little bit more of a role in the episode 2. Yeah, the Clone Wars 2, I think so. And We would love to see a standalone movie or a series of movies, because one of the things about him that for me made him a less popular character is what a pussy he was of how he got taken out in Return of the Jedi, which I actually just watched that scene with my son this morning. So as we put this together, my 7-year-old son, of course he has seen Return of the Jedi a couple times, but he didn't remember this character. He knows who he is, but he didn't remember him in the movie. So we watched the Tatooine Jabba the Hutt, 30-40 minute scene, and he was such a pansy in it. So I remember that growing up, I didn't like him that much, but I'm sure we would love to see a live action movie with all of his capabilities and just him being a badass, one of the biggest, bounty hunters in the galaxy that's far, far away. So really quick, before we look at the switch outs that it comes with, we're going to do measurements. Height wise, tallest part is his cape. It's about 26 inches, so very, very tall. And then width, the panel makes it about 15-16 inches, or that's probably the depth more so, and about 12.5 inches on the width. So it does command a lot of real estate for such a secondary character. However, he does have a few switch outs. He has 2 right arms. One is with this large giant gun, kind of a cannon. Then the other is a smaller pistol. And with that, his left arm, you can have a similar looking pistol where he's kind of pointing it in the air, which I like that with the flow of the statue of him taking off and backing up. Or the one I'm going to display, this badass flamethrower, which is a huge part of the concept and design of the statue. But a little bit of history on him. He has a lot of those gadgets, which we're obviously going to look at when we jump right in, which we're going to do right now. So concept and design is what really makes this piece. It's absolutely phenomenal. He is standing on some type of structure. It almost looks similar to like something from Bespin or Jabba's, floating ships combined. Some circuitry, some really industrial type stuff, and he's taking off his jetpack thrusters, and the smoke is filling everywhere. And of course, he does have a foot down, mostly for peg support, because the engineering would have been a nightmare to make him truly flying. And he's kind of backing up, so he's obviously attacking somebody with his gun and his flamethrower, and his cape is flowing in the wind. And it's a really cool action dynamic pose, and I love it. And from 2 feet away, this statue looks amazing, and it still looks really good up close. There's a few things that are amazing on here and a few things that I dislike. However, very cool concept, very cool design. I think that XM knocked it out of the park. I think the art direction was done by Hive Studios on this, but I love it. I think it's a great representation of Boba Fett. And that is why this is my favorite of all the different choices out there. It's simply the concept and design, and I can't say enough good things about it. Looking at the sculpt and the paint on this statue, there's good and bad. So first, starting at this industrial type bottom with all the different vents and pistons. I guess they're not pistons. There are pistons on the bottom. It starts with this brownish reddish base with some blacks in there. And then above that is this steel type gray machinery industrial aspect with vents and almost looks like possible rivets or tubes or beams. And it looks good. Paint's a little flat on it, but it's not horrible. And then moving up to kind of the stand that he's on that kind of follows this same color scheme and same machinery. Again, there's some more tubing and wiring and different vents that he's pushing off of, and this is loaded all over. It looks like these are almost bombs that fell. Same kind of color scheme, mixes those grays and those browns together. Looks good. I've seen better. And then they have that giant plate, and I don't know if this was, part of a ship or a building that he destroyed, or they're just not showing the rest of it. But there's some screws in here, and again, it's that same paint scheme. A little bit different variation though. There's some wear and weather on it. I like where it shows the battle damage on the front. And then I want to talk about his smoke, because the smoke has got some hate. I think it's pretty good actually. The sculpt is phenomenal on it. I like how it's flowing everywhere, and the texture is very, very mild, but there is some texture on there. I just love how it's pushing out everywhere. It's what probably would really happen if some smoke was billowing out if he's just taking off, which is what the concept of this story tells. And then moving up to the thrusters that it's actually coming out of, I really like that too. It shows it's a real powerful smoke, and the sculpt's really good. Where I think the smoke in the fire misses is on the paint job. So especially the orange and yellow paint job coming right out of his thrusters just doesn't look real, doesn't look natural. Then as you move down, back down, it gets to that gray, whitish smoke billowing color. It looks good. I think it does. I think they did a fine representation of it. Reminds me of Sideshow's Green Goblin premium format. I'm a fan of it. And really interesting, I want to jump to, because we're talking about it, the fire coming out of his flamethrower is excellent. So I don't understand how they could do so well on that, but they could miss what's coming out of the thrusters. And this is very reminiscent of XM Ghost Rider. It reminds me, it's identical to it almost in my mind, at least. I should just go over there and check, but I'm way too lazy. But let's get to the star of the show, Boba Fett. So with his boots, first of all, I like his boots. They have these cool little spikes coming out of them, you know, maybe another weapon. But there's some decent sculpt on the boots, some folds where he's bending, and some seam lines, and it's this brownish color. They look good. The treads on the bottom are kind of missing, so I think there was some lost opportunity there. Then moving on to, almost looks like corduroy baggy pants with all these extra pockets and whatnot in them. Some really cool texture on it. I like texture. I don't like too much texture. And I like the sculpt on it. It doesn't show any anatomy because it is a little baggy, but it's baggy exactly where it should be. It's baggy around these cool knee guards that he has to protect him, because I guess he spends a lot of time on his knees as a bounty hunter. And the folds going into those knee guards are really, really cool. It's very, very cool representation. Then he has some pockets on there, some with some tools that they actually show stuck in there. And then some were just some big baggy satchel type pockets that he could store some other tricks. And then really quick, he has some pouches on both sides that look phenomenal. It's a different color than his pants. It's not that grayish, it's a little brownish, but there's some cool stitching and texture to it, and then some cool sculpt in the folds that the brown really brings out. Then moving to his belt. So first of all, he has two parts to his belt. One is this bottom red and black part that looks really, really good. Not only does it look really, really good on the front, but on the back where it ties together. And there's some laces. It almost looks like a fat cummerbund trying to hold his belly in, but the sculpt on this part is phenomenal. I'm a big fan of it. And then the top belt where that cummerbund laces are, there's some really cool texture and paint to make it look like real leather. And that stays on all of his 7 or 8 pouches on the front. Very cool texture, very cool color. And what I really like about all of those pouches, that, you know, true bounty hunter, he probably has 50 different weapons on him. He's a true to his trade. He knows what he's going to need to take out so many different enemies. So I like that it really adds to the storyline and the concept of this piece. And then one thing he has both below his belt and above his belt is this green armor, and it's on his front of his torso and the back of his torso, and it's the same as what's on his helmet, which we're going to look at in a second, but it's very battle damaged. You can tell it's seen its time. I don't like the paint job on the battle damage. I think they could have done a little bit more, especially on the torso. Down by his nuts, it actually looks really cool because they added some other colors besides just that silver. And then the shirt underneath is really, really cool. It's got good sculpt, just like his pants. A lot of folds along the seams where there would be. I'm not a fan of the color, but it is decently comic accurate, I believe. And it looks good throughout. And then his sleeves are the same color as his pants, so his shirt wasn't. So his shirt was probably another shirt on top of some type of bodysuit. But his sleeves look phenomenal. From the stitching to the texture to the color. Really good job on that. And it's complemented by these shoulder pads that again protect him. They're the same color as his knee pads, and they have some good scoring from battle damage on the paint and the sculpt in there. And it's not too bright of a yellow. It's kind of perfect for the character. And then his arm guards, both look very similar, but both are awesome. It shows the weaponry on there with some tubing leading up to it and a control panel that they could have done a little bit more detail on. It looks a little bit like a toy on the left side, but on the right arm, looks very, very cool. Whatever gadgets he has to help him take down his enemies. And then the gun on his right arm, the bigger gun, the cannon gun. Some cool detail in it. I've seen better, but it looks good. And then I want to talk about his jetpack. I think the thrusters look great. I think there's good sculpt, good color. I like the reflective surface. I like the reflection on it. The jetpack, I don't like the paint job. I think the sculpt is okay. The paint job is very, very poor. It doesn't look metal, it looks wood. He would not have a wood jetpack. It looks wood throughout, so I think that's a big miss. One of the things on his right shoulder pad, he has these kind of braids coming down. I don't understand the point of them. I don't like them. I can't remove them. Well, I probably could, but I'm not that skilled. His cape is really cool. I really like the flow. I really like the design. I like the sculpt in it. There's some really cool inlaid texture on it. And the green doesn't look boring. There's a lot of black kind of mixed in, especially towards the edges where there's these burnt tears, almost like he burned it with the jetpack, which he would have. And then lastly, his helmet. Very cool helmet. Obviously, good representation. I think they could have done more with, instead of painting on the battle damage, they should have done more with sculpting it on. Unfortunately, a lot of it's just paint. But the rest of it looks really good. The colors pop, and it's a very true representation of Boba Fett. And then, of course, lastly, the antenna, so he can talk to his boys in space. Obviously, I don't know what his antenna is for, but... So those are my thoughts on this piece. The only Boba Fett I've seen in person, but in my opinion, based on pictures, it is the best one out there. I want to know what you guys think. I expect not only about the character, but which piece is the best. So please comment on what you're thinking about this iconic Star Wars character, iconic to some. If you want to see more of this character, not only in statues, but in the movies, and what you think of XM Studios compared to Sideshow. And I don't know of any customs out there, which kind of surprises me. Maybe we should do one. So really appreciate you guys watching. If you have not subscribed yet, please subscribe. I'm trying to save up enough money to buy a soda. And they're like, a 24 pack now is like $8 in the store. So I wanted to try that new orange Coke Zero. Coke Zero is my soda of choice. They have vanilla orange. I want to try that. And I don't have enough money, so I need more YouTube money. So please subscribe, please like. I really do appreciate you watching. When I say that, I'm not just saying it for fun. It's really cool to me that people have an interest in these pieces like I do, and they don't vomit when they see my face. My wife does. So appreciate you watching. Take care.